last couple of weeks we've not been working on the van build, and we've managed to actually get a couple of days off from work to just spend some time relaxing, getting to sort of see the local area and just spending some time in nature. I find it really therapeutic to just park up somewhere quiet and allow myself time to read a book or do some crocheting or sewing. Mike has his own little hobbies that he likes to do in the van, so for us, just sort of parking up somewhere peaceful is really beneficial for us. It's kind of a nice balance to sort of our busy work life. Even on our days off, we still have a certain amount of chores and upkeep to do in the van, and these chores, although they take longer to do, I actually find them really enjoyable just because they're fairly mindless little jobs where I can put a podcast on or some music and just get on with the day-to-day cleaning and little jobs like laundry, which take a little bit longer because we're hand washing, but in a weird sort of way I quite enjoy the labour side of it. It's easy to sort of feel a little bit more engaged in your own life when you're doing everything yourself without the sort of convenience of technology. Another of the daily chores that I've really enjoyed getting back into is cooking in the van, and I've started adapting all of my favourite recipes so that I could still enjoy them in our tiny space, and it's made me become quite inventive with what I can get away with cooking on a single ring, but also it's reignited a spark that I'd kind of forgotten about. For a long time I wanted to write a cookery book, and life just got in the way. I never got time to sit down and actually make a start on it. And while I was sitting enjoying my lunch with our resident blackbird a few weeks ago, I decided that it would be a really nice time to actually start developing my recipes for van living. So anything that I could develop to cook on a single ring or with our Ramoska when we're on electric hookup. And it's something that I've actually spent a lot of time doing the last couple of weeks, getting my head around, and it's going to be a feature in some of my upcoming videos just to test the water on how well some of these things translate into pan cooking. So for this little bit of the video, I thought I'd talk you through making one of the easiest things possible. Everything just goes into one pan and it doesn't require a huge amount of ingredients. So for these wraps, all you need to do is get a couple of shallots and garlic. I always prefer shallots over onions, but you can substitute onions if that's your preference. I would use one large onion to sort of a couple of smaller shallots that we're using here. Really, you can always use more garlic. I'm a bit of a fan, so I tend to put in far more cloves than any recipe ever gives me. But for this one, we're using 3 garlic cloves just chopped up and popped in with the shallots there. One of the things that I've found since moving in here is that I need to be a lot more prepared when it comes to our recipes. We pre-cut and measure everything before we even get our hob out. We don't have a fixed oven or gas hob, it's just a little portable camping stove, so this all happens before that even comes out of the box. So it does require a little bit more planning. I used to chop things and throw them into the pan as we went, but for all of these videos I am going to be prepping everything first and doing the cooking secondary, so hopefully that'll make it easier if you're also working on a much reduced space. Once the aubergine is peeled, you'll need to cut it into cubes around 1 centimetre square. The smaller the chunks are, the quicker they'll cook through, and that does make life easy if you're using a gas hob, just to reduce the amount of cooking time that you're actually at it. That's something I tend to do sort of whatever I'm cooking, so even when I'm making things like chips on the frying pan, I tend to use small slices rather than sort of wedges, just for the same reason. You'll want a couple of tablespoons of cooking oil over a low heat for the shallots and the garlic. You don't want to cook them all the way through, you're really just getting them to start to soften before you add the rest of the ingredients. Add the aubergine first. You'll want to make sure they're evenly spread over the heat, and you will need to give them a move around every so often. If it's anything like our van, we are almost always parked slightly wonky, so the oil always gravitates to one side of the pan or the other. It's never actually in the middle, so you'll need to keep an eye on moving things around as you go. Once the aubergine is in, you'll want to add your half cup of sultanas and 2 teaspoons each of ground mixed spice and golden caster sugar. You can substitute ordinary sugar for this, but I don't tend to use it, so we only have golden caster in the van. I find there's quite a lot of variation in the quality when it comes to canned tomatoes. Sometimes you'll get a lot of liquid and not very much content, so I do try and seek out really good quality chopped canned tomatoes to keep in the van, as we actually use these in quite a few of our recipes when we're making chili and things, so it is worth trying to find a nice one from a deli if you can, because you will notice you get a lot more actual tomato content, which sounds weird, but when you're making something like this, it's actually really noticeable how much of a balance there is between the liquid and the canned tomatoes themselves. This will need to sit and simmer for about 20 minutes or so, until the aubergine is cooked through. You will need to move it around quite a bit. Our little gas hob definitely has hot spots, so I always move the outside into the middle and make sure everything's cooked evenly through, otherwise you'll find that what's sitting on the middle will be really perfectly done and the outsides won't be. So keep an eye on that and give it a good stir every few minutes or so, just to keep things moving and cooking at the same rate. Something you hopefully won't have to deal with is changing the gas can halfway through cooking, which is what happened to me here, but that'll teach me to make sure I put a new one in next time I start filming one of these little videos. I don't automatically add seasoning to all my recipes, but for dishes like this, which have a lot going on with the flavours, I think it actually does lift it just to add a little bit of rock salt and cracked pepper along the way. But you don't have to if it's not to your taste. It works perfectly fine without it. Once these are done, you'll be able to just test the aubergine and make sure it's nice and soft all the way through. The other ingredients in there obviously don't really need to cook through, so it's a really simple one to know when it's done. And they're super simple to serve. Here I'm just having a little bit of rocket that we needed to use up in with it, but you can have them on their own. You can add a little bit of grated cheese or any other sort of salad greens that you want to have in the wrap, and you're good to go. This quantity was enough for Mike and I, and just to give you a point of reference, Mike has 2 wraps and I have 1.